The other thing that came from George Floyd Palooza was the explosion of these DEI so-called experts. It became this very popular degree that you could get at all these elite universities. I mean, by the thousands, they churned out these DEI graduates who were ready to go into all of corporate America and DEI-ify their companies and make sure that everybody was learning about implicit bias and equity and all of this nonsense. It's documented in part in Matt Walsh's brilliant documentary, Am I Racist? But there was an interesting report on NPR on Monday, Tuesday, that was lamenting, but to me it was a very interesting fact, the collapse of this industry and how now under Trump, they're all getting fired. All these DEI heads at all these companies, they're getting fired and they're crying in their soup because they can't get hired someplace else. Here's a little bit of that report.
The numbers are pretty bleak. More than 2,600 jobs in diversity or DEI have been eliminated in the last couple of years. That's more than 10% of the jobs that existed at the start of 2023. This was a dramatic change from 5 years ago. After George Floyd was murdered, there was this huge rush for companies to hire chief diversity officers and other people with experience in this kind of specialized field. But now these people are being reassigned or having their jobs renamed or in some cases being laid off. So this is a really steep loss of a lot of jobs, and it's affecting thousands of people who are trained and experienced in this area.
So I know, I think we're both happy about this news, but you tell me, so I know you say you're a pessimist. Is it really possible to root out DEI from corporate America and, dare I ask, from universities?
Different question. First of all, there were very few programs that actually had majors in DEI, but all it took was to major in women's studies or Black studies or gender studies to find yourself qualified to be a diversity bureaucrat in a corporation. And the idea that these are highly specialized fields is absurd. There's no whatsoever. It is a total grift. Why? In part because there's no problem. You know, I hate this phrase that says, well, studies have shown that DEI training doesn't work. I reject the entire premise of that because that presumes that there's a problem that DEI bureaucrats are supposed to solve. There is no problem. There is not systemic bias in corporations against females or minorities. The opposite is the case. Females and minorities are being privileged at every possible opportunity. It's straight white males who are being disadvantaged by their race and sex and sexual preferences. So let's get that straight. There is nothing necessary here. And interestingly, though, you notice she slipped in that even in the corporate world, well, they're just being renamed. So they're not. Okay. And that's what's going on in universities, where a lot of...
Wait, before we get to universities, because I know I compounded the question, but I do want to ask you something quickly as an aside. What you just said is so true about the young, white, straight males. And I would posit, but I love your take on it. You know, the Democrats are unleashing the news in the Times over the weekend was $20 million and try to figure out how to talk to white men. They can't get, in particular, young white men to vote Democrat, and they don't understand why. And they're studying the syntax used in talking to them so that they can find a way back in, Heather. And I mean, what they need to do is listen to what you just said. Like, until they start hiring them again and treating them as full, equal citizens who are not demonized because of their immutable characteristics, they will continue losing them in election after election after election.
It's people live this. I get approached by so many people when I speak publicly saying, my son had perfect MCATs and he didn't get into any of his medical schools that he applied to. Same with law schools. It is systemically biased against white males. They can also stop talking about the patriarchy. Females, to the despair of anybody who cares about civilization, are taking over institutions. That's why the universities are in such bad shape right now, because poll after poll shows that it's females who do not believe in the pursuit of truth, who do not believe in academic freedom, who believe in safetyism of shutting down ideas that some psychotic people claim they're injured by. So, females are being privileged all the time, and it's white males who live this all the time. So yes, the Democratic Party should say, we no longer believe that we have toxic masculinity. We are grateful to the contribution of creating Western civilization, of creating civilization across the world that males have given us. And yes, it's not a question of rebranding or getting Tim Walz out there in a plant jacket. It's nobody's fooled by that.
Studying the syntax of Joe Rogan. I'm not even sure what the idea is there. Okay, now let's do universities, because Trump is in a massive fight with Harvard and Columbia over the anti-Semitism that has exploded on college campuses. Let's face it, in large part due to these same DEI principles about the oppressor and the oppressed and the hierarchy of skin color, where now, because whites were at the top for a long time, they must be subjugated. And the Ibram X. Kendi theory, the answer to racism is more racism. Trump's trying, and he has two massive fights going with those two universities. But you tell me whether it really can ever be routed out of the so-called academy.
Well, I believe everything that Trump says about the universities is absolutely correct. And it's actually worse than he says. Harvard, let's not forget that Larry Summers, the economist who was the president, was run out of the presidency in large part because he dared in an academic conference to put forward a hypothesis. He did it very gently and tentatively that is actually true, which is that the disparity in the higher end STEM fields between men and women may be based on the fact that men are more interested in pure ideas, in coding, in abstract things, and women are more interested in relationships. And at the high end and low end of math skills, men way outweigh females in the high end of math and the low end of math. That was unacceptable to Harvard's community. There's one string after another of free speech violations of Harvard. There was this placemat controversy. So these schools, it cannot be overemphasized enough. They are pervaded through and through with the left-wing ideology. It's in the curriculum. It's baked into their system. That having been said, I'm going to take issue somewhat with Trump's methods. I think he's going too fast. He's not. I think he should be scrupulous about obeying the law. Anything he does, I ask myself, what would we think if the left were doing this? Is he playing by the rules? We have to be concerned about the federal government seizing power that it doesn't necessarily have illegitimately, because these precedents are going to be used against us. And I would also say this, Megyn, and this is the most controversial. I think he is using the anti-Semitism charge pretextually. I don't think that that's the main problem with these universities, but he uses it because people can grasp it. It's, there's buy-in to the fact that we should go after anti-Semitism. But I think that's a facile diagnosis. Yes, there's students who, in their pathetic studentdom and their desire to go around in packs and be conformist and to feel like they're the first people to ever spot injustice, have become just shameful apologists for anti-Jewish, anti-Israel terrorism. That is true. But I do not think that these institutions are anti-Semitic. They are anti-West. And that is the
interesting
to get to. And I don't know, how do you prove that you're not anti-Semitic any longer? He hasn't set out clear markers. If you're going to be stripping funding right and left because of anti-Semitism, you have to be clear about what it will take to get that funding back. And because I think the diagnosis is wrong, it's not really clear what the remedy is going to be. That having been said, I'm not sure I have a solution myself, but because these universities, I say the real problem is that their entire worldview is to approach every creation of Western civilization with skepticism and with contempt. Every humanities course, every social sciences course starts out from the premise that they're going to read the art of Michelangelo or the music of Mozart or the novels of George Eliot or the philosophy of Kant and Hegel as a smokescreen for illegitimate power, and they are going to unmask it. That is the stance par excellence of the academic world today, and that teaches students to hate their inheritance when instead the only obligation of universities is to teach students to be down on their knees in gratitude for what they have been given through no accomplishment or virtue of their own, and to appreciate how fragile is the legacy of civilized order that the West has given them. These universities are betraying that.
This July, there is a global summit of BRICS nations in Rio de Janeiro. The bloc of emerging superpowers, including China, Russia, India, and Iran, are meeting with the goal of displacing the US dollar as the global currency. They're calling this the Rio Reset. As BRICS nations push forward with their plans, some worry global demand for US dollars will decrease, bringing down the value of the dollars in your savings. While this transition, if it happens, would not happen overnight, the Rio Reset could mark a pivotal moment. So learn if diversifying your savings into gold is right for you. Birch Gold Group can help you move your hard-earned savings into a tax-sheltered IRA in precious metals. Claim your free info kit on gold by texting MK to the number 989898. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, let Birch Gold arm you with a free, no-obligation info kit on owning gold before July and the Rio Reset. Text MK to the number 989898 today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.